What's up, y'all? Welcome back to a brand new video. My name is Shane Wilson. Let me tell you what I'm about to do here. I am about to go through the top 10 favorite movies of my brother-in-law, this little guy's uncle, Grant Musgrove. And I'm going to be giving all of those movies a brief little review, nothing too crazy, and then a rating out of 10. If you are new here, this is actually episode 9 of this series. So far, I've hit the lists of all the people in my immediate family. And Grant is rounding it out right here because this little guy doesn't have any favorite movies yet. He's actually only seen a few movies. Also, I just pointed with my middle finger. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to flip you off. And my nephew Tripp also has only seen a handful of movies and I think only has like 2 or 3 favorites. So they're not going to get lists at the moment. But this is not the end of this series. I've already started on the next entry, which will be Mr. Craig Delano himself, the man, the myth, the legend. So stay tuned for that. But we're rounding out the immediate family here with Grant. And we are going to get this started. Before I get started, I wanted to share a couple things. Grant told me not only is this his top 10 favorite movies, he told me that his goal, which he pretty much accomplished, was to not have any repeats of anyone else that has been done before and on this list. And also I had 2 honorable mentions that I wanted to shout out, which were Champions and Warrior, both of which were on the list, and then he removed them. He sent me a revision, but I still wanted to shout those out, honorably mention those honorable mentions. So let's get into this, starting with The Dark Knight. I mean, I don't really think there's too much I can say. It's The Dark Knight, right? It's one of the greatest films of all time. It has a fantastic cast, an awesome story, awesome action pieces, the hospital blowing up, the whole last act, even though it's not as action-packed, it's more thriller with the, I'm talking about specifically with the boats. Obviously the hostage thing is action-packed, but the boats is just more like a thriller, like an experiment of people. So well done. I also think the opening scene, the bank robbery scene, is probably like off the dome the best opening scene in a movie, or at least my favorite. No, I'm going to stick with the best. I think it's awesome. Obviously Heath Ledger gets all his flowers for this movie, rightfully so. Sorry if I'm going to annoy you, me rocking, but I feel like that's self-explanatory, and him getting rocked is more important than your viewing experience, no offense. So anyways, I just think this is a perfect film. 10 out of 10. Next up, we have Django Unchained, which is just like peak Quentin Tarantino. Django is such a cool protagonist. Jamie Foxx does such a good job playing him and making him so poised. Even though Django doesn't talk much, I feel like, throughout the film. So when he does talk, it makes you listen, makes it mean something. And Jamie Foxx just is so good in this. The supporting cast is also really good, especially Christoph Waltz. He's a spectacular supporting actor, supporting role, and in the mentor role that he plays as Dr. King Schultz. And Leonardo DiCaprio as Calvin Candy is just such a good, hateable villain. I feel like it would be hard to not be a hateable villain if the villain is a slave owner. But Leo does such a good job at making him so deranged and eccentric that it just makes it work even more. 9.5 out of 10. Next up, we have 1917, which I had not seen before this, but sheesh, it is just such a cool movie. Pulling it off to where it feels like one long continuous shot is just, it's so masterful. It's so well done. I want to give huge props to 4 specific people here, but actually, let me shout out the supporting cast first. Even though majority of them, Andrew Scott, Benedict Cumberbatch, Colin Firth, Richard Madden, I'm sure I'm forgetting some other people, they had short roles, but they were so good in those roles and so impactful that the movie didn't feel, it felt like it had a good supporting cast, even though they were all brief appearances. Dean Charles Chapman was obviously in it a little bit longer, was also great. And George McKay, he just absolutely carried it. He was so good, and was so, it's like you were just rooting for him so hard. I want to specifically shout out 3 crew members. Of course, the director, Sam Mendes, his direction is so great in 1917 here. The editor, Lee Smith, for putting all of the footage together to make it into that one continuous shot, feel. Just props to Lee Smith. And finally, the cinematographer, Roger Deakins. The cinematography on this movie, the camera work is beautiful. So all three of them together pulled off something really impressive. 9 out of 10. Next up, we got Space Jam, and I really respect this pick. It's not a classically like good film, like it's not going to win a bunch of awards or whatever, but it's just an utterly fun movie, right? I'm a big fan of a live action animated like combination movie, and I think Space Jam really pulls it off well. And obviously, at least for me, really like revolutionized that. Like I know the movie came out before I was born, but that was one of the first ones I remember seeing with a real person and these cartoon characters in real life, or I'm sorry, in a film together. And Michael Jordan, for a guy that's not an actor, really holds his own, does a great job, especially since he wasn't majority of the time acting across from real people. He was acting across from whatever they put there to make the Looney Tunes. Maybe there were people there, but I mean, like, he wasn't seeing what we were seeing, obviously. Or if he was having a really good time while they were filming that movie. And, you know, while I'm personally a LeBron guy, the 2021 version does not even hold a candle to the OG Space Jam. I think it's the best basketball movie there is. 8.5 out of 10. Jurassic Park is up next. And, I mean, dinosaurs are awesome. And I feel like that is really all that needs to be said, though I'll say a little bit more. Despite dinosaurs just being incredibly sick, this is also just a really well done film. It doesn't just stand on the fact. This is not a dig on the other, well, it kind of is, I guess. The other Jurassic Park movies and the Jurassic World films, they're kind of just like, yeah, dinosaurs are awesome. And that's kind of the whole thing with those movies. This one's different. It's just a good film. And also, yeah, dinosaurs are awesome. The special effects, I couldn't imagine seeing this movie when it first came out in, I think, 1993, how crazy that would have been, just because these special effects were so game-changing and so original and so well done, and they still, to this day, hold up so incredibly well. The whole movie is so well executed, almost like this director, whoever this Spielberg guy is, really knows what he's doing. 9 out of 10. Next up, we have Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, which Grant and I talk a lot about, the turn your brain off movies. You know, it's like the Godzilla type movies, not Godzilla -1, but, you know, the Godzilla X Kong type movies that are just like good turn your brain off movies. You just go, you have a good time. In those instances, you just watch a bunch of big animals beat stuff up. And in this one, you just watch two friends travel through time and, you know, go on this excellent adventure. So it's one of those movies that does exactly what it is supposed to do. It's silly. It's mind-numbing. It's just a good time, right? And all the different historical figures that they bring in, I think all the different dynamics are so funny. The cast, not specifically the actors, but like the cast of characters that they selected, is just like so funny. Like they went obviously for your really well-known people and like Napoleon, Joan of Arc, stuff like that. But then they also just like the combination of people is just so funny. 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. Next up, we have Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. I'm recording this on May 6th, so just missing out on May the 4th be with you. But technically speaking, this is a repeat from someone else's list. And if you have faithfully watched me review other people's favorite movies, you may be sitting there questioning whose list it was. Well, it was not someone else's list. It was this guy right here, not Ryder, me. It was on my top 10 list. It's my favorite Star Wars movie, and I love Star Wars due to the action is just so good. It has the best lightsaber battle between Obi-Wan in all of Star Wars that takes place between Obi-Wan and Anakin on Mustafar. Just so great. I also think that the battle between Yoda and Emperor Palpatine is great. The battle between Obi-Wan Kenobi and General Grievous is great. The little fight at the beginning with Count Dooku is awesome. And it's just, the action is so good. And it's not just the action. There's so many other things. There's so many quotable lines. Hello there. And I have the high ground now. And all of those different things are just so quotable, so memorable, which is what, I feel like that's what you want in a big movie like this, in a big blockbuster movie. You want those memorable moments. It's also an extremely well done transition from Anakin Skywalker's story to Darth Vader's story that really sets in motion for the next trilogy, the OG trilogy, obviously. Also, I want you to just let me know in the comments down below what order if you were showing someone Star Wars for the first time, what order would you show them? My gut is 1 through 9, like episode order. Well, that's what I've done in the past, but I think I would actually probably go, originals, prequels, sequels, like the order they came out. But I'm just curious. Just let me know what you would do. Next up, we have Cool Runnings, which is just another good, silly movie. It's extremely heartwarming, which is always fun in a movie. It's always good in a sports movie, too, for it to be heartwarming, which Grant actually has 3 sports movies on this list, so shout out to him. It's like that guy likes sports or something. I also think it's impressive that the 4 bobsledders, the 4 Jamaican bobsledders for the Jamaican bobsled team, don't just feel like 4 carbon copies of each other. They're all uniquely different characters, with different motives, different character development, and just different personalities. And I think that is good, because I think in a movie like this, it would have been easy for them to just be like, oh, here's 4 Jamaican bobsledders, and that's that. Also, John Candy is, of course, really great in this as Coach Blitzer. And I'm going to go with a solid 7 out of 10 here, which is funny that a 7 is like his low so far. Next up, we got Rocky 4, which is my favorite of the Rocky saga. It's one of those movies that just makes you feel good to be an American, right? Doesn't matter what you believe about America right now, or who you're voting for, or what party you are. I don't care about all that crap. I want you to go turn on Rocky 4 and watch Rocky fight Ivan Drago and not be like, yeah, America. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, the Russians, no offense to any Russian viewers out there, y'all make some really good bad guys. Some of the best bad guys in movies. You make good bad guys. I'm all about that peace in real life, though. But they set the stakes high in this with the first fight, that it makes Drago so intimidating, and it makes him just like the ultimate threat for Rocky, like they do. I feel like that's something that can get a little stale with the Rocky movies. Oh, well, not at the first one, but like, oh, this guy Rocky's riding high. He fights somebody that should be better than him. He loses, he becomes the underdog, and then he wins or gets really close to winning. Drago is just so different, because Rocky obviously isn't the first person to fight him. Creed is. Rest in peace, Apollo Creed. Love that guy. But I guess I can't just say Creed, because people are gonna think Michael B. Jordan. But Apollo Creed. I'm talking about Rocky 4. You know which Creed I'm talking about. But they just do such a good job as setting up Drago as such a good villain. I think I'm working on a list for my blog, which is linked down in the description below, of the top 10 best movie villains, or my top 10 favorite movie villains. I haven't decided yet, but I think if it's my favorite, Ivan Drago will be on that list. I love the line from him. Dolph Lundgren does so good in this, making him so imposing, even though he doesn't talk much. He just stands there and looks buff, which he does great. But I love the line and the delivery from him in the match where he refers to Rocky as a piece of iron. Oh, I just think that is so cool. And he's like, he's not a man, he's a piece of iron, or however he says it. He says it better than that. And I personally don't think Sylvester Stallone is the best actor in the world, but if there's anyone he can play, it's Rocky. Like if he's playing Rocky, he's doing good, because that's him. That's his character. 8.5 out of 10. Finally up, we have Training Day, which was my surprise of the list. Now, I knew this was considered a good movie. I hadn't seen it. Based on the premise, I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I did. I think it's so awesome that the whole story takes place in a day. And I know you're going to be like, well, don't make sense. It takes place in one day. It's called Training Day. Well, yeah, movie titles aren't always literal, right? And I was trying to think of a movie title that wasn't literal, and the one that popped into my head was Finding Nemo, which was not a good example, because they found Nemo at the end. So whatever. But anyways, I'll think of something eventually. But I just wasn't expecting it to actually take place in a whole day. I was kind of expecting it to be like Training Week or Training Month or Training Year, but no, it's Training Day, and I think that's awesome. I love when they do that. Also, it's so hard to not like Denzel Washington. It's kind of like with Leonardo DiCaprio and Django Unchained. It's like Leo is so charismatic that it's hard to hate him, but make him a slave owner who's a complete jerk, you're going to hate him. Denzel, he's such a good actor that even though he's such a charismatic guy, and even his villain is so charismatic, that he makes himself unlikable, right? And it's like he won Best Lead Actor for this movie, Ethan Hawke, who I would say is the protagonist. Like, Denzel was so good that Ethan Hawke was nominated for Best Supporting Actor. Even though Ethan Hawke, he's great. He's a great protagonist. He's so focused and driven and like on the straight and narrow, that it's just like he's very easy to root for. It's like, and it kind of makes you question, like, what would I do in this situation? Would I take the money, or would I kind of go dirty on him, right? Anyways, Training Day, King Kong ain't got bleep on this movie. 10 out of 10. Now, if you're doing the maths, which good for you if you are, I'm not, but I did earlier, and that brings Grant's total to a drum roll, please. Ryder, can you give me a drum roll? Thank you, Ryder. 90 out of 100, which is an average of 9 out of 10 per movie, which is just great. Also, that puts Grant in the new number 1 spot, dethroning my dad, Mr. Scott Wilson the first. I know there's 3 of them. It's confusing. Dethroning my dad, who had an 88.5. And Grant takes the new number 1 spot. Obviously, 90 being the highest. He's the first person to score above the 80s. So shout out to him. There's a new king in town, and his name is Grant Musgrove, I guess. Good for him. We'll see. Like I said, I'm doing Mr. Craigslist right now. I'm going to eventually move on to some of my friends here, and then we'll kind of go from there and see what else I can do. I mean, these take me long enough that it'll take me a while before I have to get there, even though I don't have that many friends, so it actually might not take that long. But anyways, Grant, thank you for putting this list together. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Thank you, Ryder, for being such a good boy and sleeping literally this whole time. I tried to record this yesterday. He was not sleeping. It wasn't his fault that I didn't record. I messed it up on my end. It wasn't his fault. But, this has been another episode. Grant takes the number 1 spot, and I really think there's only one thing to say to wrap this up. Peace and blessings, everyone.